You wouldn't think something as simple as a porch swing could cause a war. But where I live, nothing escapes the eyes of the HOA. To me, that swing was more than wood, and chains it was freedom. It was where I had my morning coffee. Where my nieces sat giggling while I pushed them on Sunday afternoons. And where I ended most of my evenings, letting the cool breeze wash away the stress of the day. But apparently, to my HOA, it was a violation, a hazard, and a personal insult to their sense of control. The swing itself was nothing extravagant. I had built it one summer weekend out of cedar, carefully sanding every edge, staining it with a warm honey finish, and hanging it from thick steel chains I bolted securely into the porch beam. It could hold 3 adults comfortably, and when it swayed, it made this soft creak that reminded me of summer nights back at my grandparents' farmhouse. Every neighbor who passed by seemed to smile when they saw it. "Looks peaceful," they'd say. Some even asked me if I could help them build one too. But then there was Karen. The HOA president had a reputation that traveled faster than the mail. She was the kind of woman who seemed to live for conflict, like waking up in the morning. Wasn't complete until she'd written up at least 2 violation notices. People joked that she had binoculars glued to her face at night, peering out from behind her curtains, hunting for rule breakers like a predator in the dark. I hadn't been on her radar until the swing. It was a warm Tuesday evening when it all began. The sun was setting, the air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass, and I had just settled into my swing with a cold glass of sweet tea. That's when I saw her. Clipboard in hand, expression tighter than a coiled spring, Karen marched down the street like a soldier on patrol. She stopped dead in front of my house, squinting at me like she was looking at graffiti sprayed across the Mona Lisa. "Evening, I said, trying to be neighborly. She didn't respond with a greeting. Instead, she lifted one finger and pointed at the swing like she was accusing me of harboring a fugitive. "That is not allowed." I tilted my head. "The swing?" "Yes," she snapped. "According to our HOA standards, modifications to the porch require approval from the board. That swing is a violation. It's unsightly, and it could pose a safety risk if it were to break." I nearly laughed out loud. The thing was anchored better than most of the porch beams in this neighborhood. I had spent a whole weekend making sure it was safe enough to outlast a hurricane. Unsightly, it matched my porch trim perfectly. But Karen wasn't here for logic. She scribbled something furiously on her clipboard and walked away without another word. The next morning, I found the notice, bright yellow, taped right to my front door like a scarlet letter. It read, "Violation Notice, Unauthorized Porch Modification. Remove the swing within 10 days or face fines of $50 per day until compliance is met." My blood boiled. $50 a day. Over a swing. I wasn't hurting anyone. I wasn't lowering property values. And yet here I was, being threatened with fines for enjoying something as innocent as a porch swing. That evening, I sat right back down on it, rocking slowly as I tried to calm myself. That's when my neighbor Bill strolled over. Bill was in his 60s, gray-haired, the kind of guy who had a permanent sunburn from working in his garden year-round. He leaned on my fence and gave me a knowing grin. "Karen got you, huh?" he said. I held up the notice. "Can you believe this? Over a swing." Bill chuckled. "Last year, she tried to fine me $500 because I painted my shutters the wrong shade of blue. I told her to shove it, got a lawyer, and she backed off. She preys on people who don't push back. Don't let her scare you." That conversation stuck with me long after Bill went home. He was right, Karen was a bully. And bullies only win when people roll over. That night, as I rocked on my swing, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Karen win. I wasn't just going to keep my swing, I was going to take things a step further. I'd play her little game, but I'd twist it in a way she'd never see coming. If she thought she could ban my porch swing, I'd build something so big, so undeniable, and so perfectly within the rules that the HOA wouldn't be able to touch it. And that's when the idea for the backyard swing was born. The notice from the HOA was still taped to my fridge, a daily reminder of how far Karen was willing to go just to feel powerful. Every time I opened the door to grab a drink, the bold print screamed at me like a taunt. Remove within 10 days. Fines of $50 a day. I had half a mind to crumple it up and toss it, but I left it there on purpose. It fueled me. The idea of the backyard swing grew stronger with every passing day. Not just a swing something outrageous, something so big. It would make the porch swing look like a child's toy. The more Karen wanted control, the more I wanted to take it away from her. I started sketching. At first, it was just doodles on a napkin, a tall wooden frame, thick beams, ropes thicker than my arm, and a seat wide enough for 5 people to sit uncomfortably. By the end of the week, I had real plans spread out on my kitchen table, complete with measurements and a list of materials. Now here's the thing. Karen was crafty, but I knew the rules as well as she did. The HOA governed modifications to the front of houses and anything considered visible to the street, but the backyard? That was private territory. As long as my swing was safe, didn't cross into a neighbor's property line, and wasn't some permanent structure like a new building, the HOA couldn't touch it. It was my loophole, and I was going to drive a truck through it. The first step was gathering supplies. I drove out to the lumberyard on the edge of town, the kind of place where the air smells like fresh-cut cedar and sawdust clings to your boots. The guy behind the counter raised an eyebrow when I told him what I was building. "You sure about this?" he asked, jotting down my order. "That's gonna be one massive swing. Gonna need beams at least 12 feet tall, pressure treated if you want it to last. And the hardware. You're talking about steel brackets, lag bolts, reinforced chains. Not cheap." I smiled, pulling out my credit card. I've never been more sure of anything. By Saturday morning, the materials were stacked in my backyard, like a fortress. Neighbors poked their heads over fences, curious. Bill, my older neighbor, wandered over with his coffee mug in hand, chuckling. "What in the world are you building, son?" "A swing," I said, with a grin. Bill raised his eyebrows. "That's one hell of a swing. You trying to launch yourself to the moon?" "Something like that," I replied. Construction took days. I dug for deep holes for the posts, each one filled with concrete so the beams wouldn't budge an inch. With every shovel of dirt, I imagined Karen's face when she saw what I was putting together. The frame alone towered over my backyard, like the skeleton of a giant playground. The beams groaned as I bolted them into place, the steel brackets, locking them together with satisfying clinks of my wrench. By midweek, I had the crossbeam installed, and it stretched across like a challenge to the sky. Heavy-duty chains dangled down thick enough to hold a small car. For the seat, I built a wide cedar bench, polished and sealed, with armrests on each end and enough space for a whole family to pile on. Every evening, neighbors came by to watch the progress. Some brought beer, others brought lawn chairs, turning my project into a kind of block party. The more they saw, the more they cheered me on. "You're a legend," one younger neighbor laughed. "Karen's gonna blow a gasket when she sees this." Bill slapped my shoulder. "You're not just building a swing, you're building a monument." And he wasn't wrong. By the time I hoisted the seat onto the chains and tested it with my weight, I knew I had created something more than a backyard toy. It was freedom, defiance, and joy, all rolled into one. The first swing sent me sailing gently back and forth, the chains creaking like music, the air rushing past my face. I felt like a kid again. Of course, wasn't long before Karen found out. It was late afternoon when I caught sight of her standing at the edge of my property line, hands on her hips, staring through the slats of my fence. She didn't say anything, just squinted her eyes and scribbled something on her clipboard. I walked over, wiping the sweat from my brow, admiring the view. She looked up sharply. "What is that?" "A swing," I said simply. "That's not a swing. That's a monstrosity. You can't build something like that without HOA approval." I leaned against the fence, smiling calmly. "Actually, I can. It's in my backyard, not visible from the street. Doesn't violate any bylaws." I checked. Her face went red, like a kettle about to boil over. "We'll see about that," she snapped, stomping away with her clipboard. The neighbors who had gathered chuckled, shaking their heads. Bill muttered, "Oh, this is going to be good." And just like that, I knew the war was only getting started. Karen wasn't going to let this go. But neither was I, because this wasn't just about a swing anymore. This was about freedom, respect, and proving that bullies like Karen couldn't control every square inch of our lives. And I had a feeling the real fight was only beginning. Karen didn't waste any time. The very next morning, I woke up to the sound of knocking at my door. Not the polite kind, either sharp, angry bangs that rattled the glass in the window. I opened the door to find Karen standing there, flanked by two board members. One had a folder tucked under his arm, and the other carried a clipboard. It felt less like a neighborhood visit and more like a raid. "We need to discuss your structure," Karen said, her lips curling around the word, like it was poison. "Morning to you too," I replied, sipping my coffee. "What structure?" She jabbed a finger toward my backyard. "That ridiculous contraption you've erected. The bylaws clearly state that residents must seek HOA approval for any external additions." I smirked. "External additions visible from the street. Read carefully next time." Her eyes narrowed. "It's a nuisance. It's unsafe. Children could get hurt." "The liability children." I cut her off. "It's in my backyard, not a public park. My liability, my responsibility. And before you even ask, yes, I built it with safety in mind. 4-foot deep posts, reinforced beams, chains rated for 2 tons. Safer than half the playgrounds in this city." The two board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them even muttered, "It does look pretty solid, Karen." She shot him a glare so sharp I thought it might cut him in half. "We'll issue a violation," she snapped. "Fines will start immediately." I leaned against the doorframe, completely unbothered. "And I'll contest every single one of them. You'll spend more money on lawyers than I'll ever pay in fines. And when this goes to court, you'll lose, because I know the rules better than you think." For a moment, she just stood there, her face turning redder by the second. Then, she spun on her heel and stormed off, her little entourage scrambling after her. But here's the thing about people like Karen. When they can't win with rules, they turn to other tactics. Over the next week, little things started happening. Someone accidentally left a nasty note in my mailbox, calling me selfish. My trash cans were mysteriously tipped over 2 mornings in a row. And late one night, I caught a couple of HOA loyalists peeking over my fence, whispering to each other while shining a flashlight at my swing. But it didn't stop me from enjoying it. If anything, the swing became a magnet for neighbors. Families would come over in the evenings, kids laughing as they took turns while parents sat nearby with cold drinks. Bill even brought his grandkids one Saturday, and I swear it was the happiest I'd seen him in years. It's like you brought the community together. One neighbor told me, "Funny how the HOA says they're all about community, but you actually did it." That's when I realized the swing wasn't just my rebellion anymore, was becoming a symbol. A quiet act of defiance that gave people permission to enjoy life without being micromanaged. And of course, Karen hated that. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Thick envelope, official-looking stamp, addressed to me in bold letters. I tore it open, expecting another fine, but this was different. It was a cease and desist letter drafted by an HOA lawyer. According to them, my swing violated community aesthetic standards and posed a danger to neighborhood harmony. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the paper. Harmony. Karen was the only one who had a problem. But instead of ignoring it, I did something better. I called my lawyer friend, Mark. He'd handled HOA cases before. And when I explained the situation, he chuckled. "They don't have a leg to stand on," he said. "This is harassment. You want my advice? Document everything. Every letter. Every note. Every so-called violation. Because when this blows up, and it will, you'll want proof." So that's what I did. I started a folder. Every scrap of paper from the HOA went into it. Every tipped-over trash can, I took pictures. Every odd incident, I logged the date and time. Meanwhile, the swing became bigger than I ever imagined. Someone posted a video of it on social media, just a quick clip of me and Bill swinging back and forth, laughing like kids. By the next morning, it had thousands of views. People commented things like, "HOAs are the worst. This guy's a legend." And that's how you stick it to the neighborhood tyrants. Karen must have seen it too, because the very next day, she marched up to my fence, red-faced and fuming. "You think this is funny?" she barked, making a mockery of our community. I will not be humiliated like this. I leaned on the fence, calm as ever. "Karen, you're not humiliated because of me. You're humiliated because you picked the wrong fight." She pointed a trembling finger at me. "Mark my words, I will make you regret this." But as she stormed away, I couldn't help but smile. Because I knew something she didn't. I wasn't just building a swing anymore. I was building a case. And soon enough, it was going to come crashing down on her. Karen didn't just simmer, she boiled. And when Karen boiled, she overflowed onto everyone around her. Within days of our last encounter, she called an emergency HOA meeting. I didn't attend, of course, but half the neighborhood filled me. And afterward, she stood at the front of the clubhouse, ranting like she was addressing Congress, waving pictures of my swing as if they were evidence of a crime. "This," she declared, pointing at the photo, "is a disgrace to our community. It undermines the standards we've worked so hard to uphold. If we let one person get away with this, where does it end? Giant slides. Backyard roller coasters? Will be a circus." From what my neighbors told me, the crowd wasn't buying it. Most people had seen the swing up close. They knew how sturdy it was, how much joy it brought. Parents had watched their kids laugh until their cheeks hurt. Couples had taken turns swinging together under the evening sky. One neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, apparently stood up and said, "Karen, the only circus around here is this meeting." But Karen wasn't listening. She rallied her loyalists and announced they were filing a formal lawsuit against me. That's right, a lawsuit. Over a swing. When the papers arrived at my door, I almost laughed. The claims were ridiculous. Lowering property values, creating an eyesore, disturbing neighborhood peace. Mark, my lawyer friend, read through them and shook his head. "This isn't a case," he said, smirking. "It's a tantrum dressed up in legal language. Don't worry, we'll counter this." But Karen wasn't stopping at the courts. 2 days later, I came home to find a city inspector standing in my backyard, clipboard in hand, examining the swing. Karen had filed a complaint, claiming the structure was unsafe and built without permits. The inspector looked at me, embarrassed. "Sorry, man. I had to come check it out. Procedure." I walked him through the build, showed him the depth of the posts, the steel brackets, the rated chains. He even sat on the swing himself, bouncing gently as he tested it. "This is better built than half the playgrounds I inspect," he admitted. "You're fine. She's wasting everyone's time." Ha, I couldn't resist snapping a picture of him swinging with a smile. Later, I sent it to a few neighbors, and somehow it ended up online. Within hours, people were sharing it everywhere, captioning it with things like, "Even the city loves the swing." Karen must have lost her mind. The more she tried to fight, the more support I gained. Neighbors rallied around me. They brought over food, offered to testify if it came to court, and even helped me set up string lights around the swing, turning it into the centerpiece of our block. Nights became magical warm glow of lights, laughter filling the air, the creak of chains swinging back and forth. And that's when the twist hit. Mark called me one evening with a tone I hadn't heard before. Serious. Sharp. "You're not gonna believe this," he said. I dug a little deeper into Karen's HOA spending records. Guess what I found? What? She's been using HOA funds for personal expenses. We're talking vacations, home renovations, even a spa membership. She's been skimming off the top for years. I nearly dropped the phone. You're kidding? Nope. And if this goes to court, it's all going to come out. She picked the wrong fight, my friend. She's about to bury herself. That night, as I sat on the swing under the glow of the string lights, neighbors chatting around me, I couldn't help but smile. Karen thought she was destroying me. But, in reality, she had built the very rope she was going to hang herself with. The war over the swing wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about exposing Karen for who she really was. And soon, everyone would know the truth. The court date loomed like a storm cloud on the horizon. For weeks, Karen strutted around the neighborhood, boasting that she was about to restore order and put an end to backyard monstrosities. She truly believed the swing would be her grand victory. But what she didn't know was that Mark and I were sitting on a mountain of evidence that could topple her entire empire. The morning of the hearing, neighbors gathered in small clusters, watching as Karen marched out of her house in a power suit, dragging a rolling briefcase stuffed with documents. She looked like she was going to war. Meanwhile, I walked out in a simple shirt and slacks, calm as ever. Bill clapped me on the back. "Go get her, kid," he said. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Karen sat across from me, smirking like she'd already won. Her lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, shuffled papers dramatically, clearly trying to intimidate me. The judge entered, and the case began. Karen's lawyer launched into a speech about community standards, property values, and my so-called dangerous eyesore. He painted me as a reckless rebel who threatened the very harmony of the neighborhood. Then it was Mark's turn. Calm, steady, precise. He dismantled their arguments one by one, pointing out how the bylaws only applied to front-facing structures, how the swing was inspected and approved by the city, and how dozens of neighbors had expressed their support for it. And then Mark dropped the bombshell. "Your Honor," he said, holding up a thick folder, "we have reason to believe the plaintiff has been misusing HOA funds. These documents show unauthorized spending on personal expenses, vacations, luxury items, even a spa membership. These are funds taken directly from the homeowners she claims to represent." The courtroom erupted. Karen's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. "Is this true, Mrs. Henderson?" The judge asked sharply. Karen stammered. That has nothing to do with this case. It has everything to do with this case," the judge interrupted. "It speaks to credibility and abuse of power." By the time the hearing ended, the lawsuit against me was dismissed entirely. But Karen's nightmare was only beginning. The judge ordered an audit of the HOA's finances, and within weeks, the truth came spilling out. Tens of thousands of dollars misused, years of deceit. The board members turned on her instantly. She was removed from her position, slapped with fines, eventually sued by the very homeowners she had tormented for so long. As for me, I walked away not just with my swing intact, but with the respect of the entire neighborhood. People began stopping by more often, not just to swing, but to share meals, laughter, and stories. My backyard became the heart of the community, everything the HOA had claimed it wanted, but never actually created. One evening, as the sun dipped low and kids played on the swing while parents chatted under the string lights, Bill leaned over to me and said, "Funny, isn't it? She tried to tear this down, and instead, you built something stronger than she ever could." I smiled, watching the swing glide back and forth, carrying laughter with it. Karen had tried to control everything, but in the end, she lost it all, and me. I gained something she could never take away: freedom, community, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best way to fight back isn't with anger or fists, it's with joy, persistence, and a swing that was just too big to break. Asterisk. And that's how a simple front porch swing turned into a neighborhood showdown that the HOA never saw coming. They tried to strip me of something small, but instead, I built something bigger, something that brought my family and neighbors together. In the end, they realized they couldn't control every piece of my life, no matter how hard they tried. Sometimes, the best way to fight back isn't through anger or endless arguments, it's through creativity, persistence, and a little bit of humor. That giant swing in my backyard isn't just wood and rope, it's a reminder that we don't always have to bow down to unfair rules. Sometimes, you just need to swing a little higher, laugh a little louder, and show them that life's too short to be controlled by people who forgot how to enjoy it.